sport to me is like salvation, whereas like the arts are like redemption. Like I can be saved, I can have my soul saved by sport if I just do these rituals. And that's how I felt about the game. Like I have these very specific rituals that if I just do them in this order and I just do these things, you can be saved. Salvation is there.
Welcome back to Dive Beyond Sport, the podcast where performance meets humanity. Today's guest is Gaz Choudhry, MBE. Gaz, welcome.
Hello, how's it going?
Beautiful, man. Beautiful.
Gaz, it's great to have you. I'm so excited for this conversation. I want to kick it off actually by creating a bit of context straight away for the listeners about the type of person that you are, some of the experience that you have, and also kind of hitting straight away on our main theme of identity. Because I read a story about you having to jump into a player coach role at the very last minute of the Tokyo 2021 Paralympics, as you're a wheelchair basketball player, and you had to then lead the team whilst also playing yourself, but changing those roles. Can you tell us a little bit around the circumstances of that and how you had to make those kind of internal adjustments to go from a peer to a leader and guiding your team towards, whatever outcome you hoped for?
Yeah. So 2021, I think like all of us athletes that would have been training at that time, it was a wild time, man. We completely forget. But our particular sport, we were in these, and I think a lot of the Olympic sports would have been as well. We were in these kind of like strange lockdown camps at Loughborough Uni, where we were having these 2 weeks at a time and then a week at home, but you were basically told to kind of just isolate from everyone else. And so we were in these camps. It was a long summer. We had we were defending world champions from 2018, but going into those games, largely due to COVID and some personal reasons, we were missing sort of, four. So it's a squad of 12. We were missing 4 of our really key players that led to that goal. So it was already a kind of strange. The team was already kind of stretched and trying to figure things out. And then we were, in some ways, I suppose the lockdown camps helped in that. We all had to adapt on the fly. It was a strange experience for us because most of us have been playing professionally, either in Spain, Italy, or Germany. And the Spanish league had happened, it wasn't canceled or anything. So we were coming from where we were just getting kind of bi-weekly testing and before the game in the week. Anyway, so coming into this kind of new environment where, and we found out so we basically found out they had these really, really strict processes in place, much stricter than we were experiencing. I was particularly in Spain. I had 3 other GB athletes in that team as well. So we'd done a whole year. We were kind of living with COVID, whereas in the summer and preparing for Tokyo, it was very much like everything was still just about COVID. So last minute, sort of, I would say like a week, I want to say, before we headed out, our coach tested positive. Initially, the team had some issues. I had issues with the coach. I mean, to expand on it completely, I was already the assistant coach while playing for that tournament as it was. And that was the first time my role in the team was kind of formalized as an assistant coach. We had for a long time, I'd had a massive input in tactically what we did as a team. In certain tournaments, I was playing a lot of minutes and starting. In other tournaments, I didn't play as much. Like in 2018, I didn't play very much at all. But I had a massive role in the technical and tactical aspect of the team. So I'd already kind of had that informally. And then in the lead up to Tokyo, because we were such an insular situation, the performance director, the coach, and ourselves in how we were preparing, decided that I'd have it formalized as an assistant. So when the coach tested positive, that was which we never anticipated happening. We didn't have another external assistant coach or anything else like you normally would in a team. So just, tested positive. I was kind of next man up, I suppose, which we kind of had in that summer anyway, because some of the guys were missing kind of next man up and doing what you can. And yeah, I mean, I remember finding out we'd just done a individual shooting session that morning. And it was really sad because our coach took a lot of precautions. Like he'd wear gloves during like shooting sessions and coaching sessions, masked up all the time. It was really shock for one person that wasn't going to be, our worry always was the guys as we go home, especially the younger athletes. Like, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time is Spanish. So she was coming over from Spain and she'd want to do things in London. London is open again. And I'll be like, no. So she's flying over and we're just stuck in a room basically. But we were worried about some of the younger athletes. Maybe when they go home, they're not quite as disciplined or whatever else. The last person we expected was our coach to catch COVID, and he did. So he couldn't travel. That was it. And it was just set off this cascading chain of events. It was really important for myself to before doing that to have the complete buy-in from the players. It's one thing being kind of influential in the team. It's very different having that power dynamic shift, I suppose. Even though I didn't feel like that is something that's definitely felt by athletes. I mean, you can love coaches and hate coaches, but that power dynamic always exists, especially in team sports. Because they're not, objective markers as such. It is essentially like a game of vibes and taste in that sense. So that happened. The leadership, the kind of veterans of the team did a really amazing job of talking to the rest of the team, and I was really aware that decision needs to be made when I'm not there. So I remember the process. I'm sure you guys have trained at Loughborough Uni, where the halls are and stuff, where you say the kind of new. I don't know how new the dorms are, but they seem pretty modern. But anyway, so they went ahead and had a meeting, and they brought in, and then we had like a joint meeting, and like kind of not kumbaya, but it was kind of like, okay, let's see how this works. That was basically it. That was basically it, man. That was a long story for very much little payback, or payoff rather. But yeah.
Yeah, but I love, but I think obviously I think with what Yona's getting at is obviously that's a crazy position and situation to be in. And I think obviously for you guys, from what I understand, you were potentially like a very high point scorer, right? And I think you even have some records about points scored in a game, and so I suppose there's a selfish element to that, right? And like you want to be the guy making shots to a degree, but of course it's a team. But then suddenly if you're I can imagine a conflict between that and how did you manage that? Or
yeah, I think it's lucky that it came as I was certainly older. It kind of goes. It's almost a cliche, especially in team sport. But I truly, deeply understand that scoring is a function of the team, and especially in wheelchair basketball. So if you're a fan of able body basketball, you know anything about, running basketball is essentially a one-on-one sport. So you create an advantage by beating the guy in front of you. Essentially, you have various tactics. But wheelchair basketball uniquely is fundamentally a 2-on-2 sport. So it's something that I understood, I would probably say sort of midpoint in my career. Like, if I've scored 30, and 26 of them have been from the positions where I want to score from, it's on that the two that we're working, the pairing that we're working together, we're scoring together. It doesn't matter where the ball comes out. I want to score from certain spots on the floor. As a player, I'm very methodical as a scorer. I tend to score in order to do other things. I don't see scoring as an end in itself, and that's how I approached it. So what I would say is I deeply, not in a kind of euphemistic way, truly understand that scoring is just a function of the team. So I didn't have like an ego about scoring as such. I see it very much as a tactical thing. So I think that helped me in my role. And I think having um, had tactical inputs in big tournaments and big key moments in the past, and I think really fortunate that the other athletes kind of understood that about me by that stage in my career. I think if it happened sort of even in 2016, that maybe I'm not as well understood at that point, maybe within the team. It could be like he's just wants, ego or whatever else. But by the time Tokyo came around, it certainly wasn't the case. And I was really lucky that the team understood that, I think, at a deep level as well.
100%. I mean, that's one part of my kind of interest was the team response. And obviously, as you say, it sounded like the response was quite easy because you already had that position of authority to a certain extent, because you're already the kind of assistant coach, so you were responsible for some of the tactical decisions. So there probably wasn't too much of a shift there, to be fair. But from a personal perspective, going from a position of yes, you are responsible in some places, but actually the coach is ultimately responsible for everything. So you can kind of go about your business with maybe slightly less pressure on your shoulders to this then phase where actually you are ultimately responsible for everything and it's all your decision, and you've got to perform on the court as well. Did that change the amount of pressure that you felt? Did it affect your performances? Were you still able to be like present on the court in the same way that you were previously, or did it change that kind of mindset a little bit?
Really interesting question. If I'm honest, I preferred it in a sense of it gave me more control, and especially in a team sport. But as an athlete, you want control, right? And I have this kind of duality to me where I'm very different as a person outside of my sport, and how I approach sport. So I kind of almost, I have what I would consider well thought out opinions about things, about my sport and how it functions. And the sport, my relationship with the sport is it's very, for the lack of better word, scientific. I always saw the game as very specific, like detail oriented. I'm a very detail oriented athlete when I was an athlete. So in some ways it was easier because I was able to do things tactically, at least, and I didn't have to mediate that through a coach or convince a coach or anything like that. So that was a shortcut that I much prefer. There are times on the court where, something simple like I want a timeout as a player. I know we need a timeout. I can sense it. And I have to kind of mediate that with the coach to say, call a timeout or not. And if the coach doesn't call a timeout within the moment, the thought arises, this coach is rubbish. Like, why is he not calling a timeout? I can't help. I have to kind of access that ego part of me to play because I'm in that kind of competitive, war state or whatever, conflict state. So I'm not the best version of myself as a human being when I'm competing. So
yeah, most of us probably the same.
So yes, yeah. I mean, you got to kind of get to where you got to get to, right? Like, so for me, I had to kind of get to this very, conflict-driven. For the lack of a better word, I don't know if you're allowed to swear on this, but I was basically like I have to be a dickhead. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have to be a dickhead because I'm thinking like I'm trying to like win in a competition, and so it's very hard for me to mediate that state of mind to then being the kind of compassionate, understanding human being that I would be
to have like rational conversation.
Exactly. But I never lose. But I was really lucky that I was able to channel that conflict and still be rational within the framework of the sport. And oftentimes with the coach, I'm having to mediate myself. Where and sometimes I'm not right, but I think I know better. So why is this coach not doing this? So that helped me because it also exposed me to the weight of decision making. I wasn't, they what did they say? They call it like a couch quarterback or whatever. So it's me, it's my decision, and it's all on me. And I was able to compartmentalize being an athlete because I saw, you can never be objective, but I did recognize my weaknesses and strengths as an athlete, especially as an older athlete. So I very much was able to kind of pick my spots as an athlete while doing the larger piece of this kind of the orchestra that plays as a sport. So I was able to be the conductor in real time as opposed to have that delay, which I really liked.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That's a really cool reflection on that, actually. I've not really thought about that, like almost the sort of the lag between communication with someone who's actually not on the court. And you went on to win a bronze medal in the Tokyo Olympics as well.
Unfortunately, it was a bronze. Yeah.
Still, though, I mean, it's still pretty amazing. But okay, you were in it for the gold, I guess. But I want to obviously, like that's a fascinating start. But I just want to give now full context on your life and like really your background, Gaz. And so, could you just talk us through that a little bit? Because you were born in Karachi. And obviously you had cancer from a very young age, which led to an amputation. So could you just sort of paint that picture briefly and what took you from there, and then obviously coming to the UK, and then eventually maybe finding wheelchair basketball?
Yeah, so I came to the UK as a kid before I lost my leg, everything else. And then at 10, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in my knee. I was like a super athletic child, like cricket, boxing, were my main kind of taekwondo, like martial, like super, like just run all the time. And basically, I got diagnosed in January 1996. So I was 10 and a half. Or you may not know. So you go through this kind of chemotherapy starts. You finally have to have an amputation. You get more chemo, all that sort of stuff. And it's such a whirlwind, and it's such a seminal time where, at 10, you're not you yet in this, you don't have selfhood in a real material, tangible way. You're kind of just, you kind of just like doing the speed run with Sonic and collecting rings at that point. There isn't really a mission as such at 10.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's an unreal analogy.
When you were talking, in my head, I was thinking like a big bag of energy. That was my way of describing it. And you just hit Sonic the Hedgehog. That's incredible. That's way better.
Yeah. I don't know. It was left field. So post that. So what was interesting for me in terms of identity is my identity formed, or when I suppose trauma, I don't know about you guys, but trauma is always the first thing you remember, right? You were formed by traumas, essentially. And I was too young for it to be traumatic, or at least I was at that point. Because it didn't happen to me, because me wasn't this thing as such. It was happening. So it wasn't traumatic as such. It was very much like, okay, what's the next step? And I hadn't, at 10, I didn't really grasp the gravity of mortality or anything like that. Like, only 20% of kids are living through this or anything like that. Like, it's funny. I was speaking to my mom over Christmas, and so you guys heard of like Make-A-Wish. So all the kids that have like terminal illnesses, you have Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I asked for a computer with like Windows 95. I didn't want to meet, like, so it was also like a practical request, like, oh, I could do my schoolwork on this. And I was like thinking back to it, I was like, that's an interesting insight into like where my brain was at during that, life altering experience. Like I was thinking about, oh, Windows 95, it's not Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, that's such a random choice. Like, why did I choose? Like, I didn't want to meet Eric Cantona. Like, what? Like, why didn't you say this to me, Rob? Like, go to a Man United game or something. Like, what?
Do you think that was?
It's so random.
Do you think that was? Do you know? Do you know any reason why? Like maybe growing up in Pakistan or?
No, not at all. Like it was just like I think I saw on like I don't know if it was tomorrow. I must have read something about It was the Pentium 75, and I know that was in my brain. Like before that, it was like a 4H. I'm not a big computer nerd, but that was in my brain somehow. The thought of a Pentium 75 and Windows 95 or whatever it was, and that's what I wanted. I was like, that is the next computer. Like that is cool. Like I can do. Da, 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 da. And I hadn't considered that being like an actual quote unquote dying wish, which is essentially what Make-A-Wish is trying to do. Like, what a random. So I didn't even consider that thing as being the end of the story kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, post that, then starting school again and trying to find sport. Like, I remember. So I went to a mainstream high school, and I started slightly late. I started year 7 slightly later because I was still, recovering and whatnot. And I was just trying to learn to walk with a prosthetic and getting around on crutches, like all the kind of mobility, like the life side of it post, like acquiring a disability. And that is the first. Like I started to miss sport then because that was like. That phase of treatment where it's just like you're in hospital, then you're home, then you're hospital, home. That had kind of 9 months of that being your life. And I remember just being put in goal and just trying to save, just getting these balls like pelted at you, like at your head, with these long crutches. But you're making good saves because you got crutches. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh yeah, I can go and goal. So it was a wild time, and I was really lucky. We had a swimming pool in our school, and it would open in the summer, and it wasn't a very good school. It's changed names like 4 times since I left. But I started to swim in the summertime when the pool opened in PE. We would swim, and that was the first time where I was able to like move comparably on equal footing, especially at that age. So I started to just love swimming. And I swam a bit, but that wasn't really my sport of choice. So it wasn't my drug of choice. The pool wasn't the thing.
Unlike us.
And yeah, exactly. Well, you guys just dive head first, boy. Oi. Yeah. So that was it. And then I had to kind of find out about. I tried different sports. I was really lucky. Again, my mom was incredible and she never kind of considered my disability as a thing or didn't make me feel like it was a thing. So if I wanted to try something or if I wanted to do something, just go for it. I remember feeling sad during sports day that first year because I used to sprint as well. So like I was quite fast. So like seeing people run would be like, oh man, do you know what I mean? Like it was like, but it was never a situation of like I do remember as a child not having I didn't pout about it or that didn't arise. Like it wasn't like I was overcoming that feeling. It was just the fact that I never felt that. It was very much like, what can I want to try something that'll make me feel like that again, more than anything else.
Even in the way you're explaining it, it feels absolutely like that. Like you're talking about not pouting at all. Like that's absolutely the way it's coming across already. Just listening.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it. And then just your kind of usual going through. I had a difficult time because I had the type of bone cancer I had. It reoccurs in your lungs. Basically, osteosarcoma is a bone cancer, but it's secondary. When it reoccurs, it comes in your lungs as these like calcium deposits, essentially. So once you have been diagnosed, you kind of go through this 5 or 8 year remission period where they just take chest X-rays every 6 months, sort of bi-yearly. So when I was 12, I had the reoccurrences in my lungs, and at that point, I was a person, I was a human being that had selfhood, and that was the first. And the survival rate is really low if it reoccurs. like really low. So I had to have the whole process go again. It was like 6 months. So I think I was in year 9 maybe. And I discovered basketball. I was getting into the groove of being this person. And I was aware enough, like at that point, like that I'm going to die. And I remember that very, very clearly. Um, so that started what I would say is like the kind of my thought process of introspection. And at that time, basketball really helped me, like really helped me. Like, I mean, I was what, 12, maybe 12 and a half, 13. No, a bit older, maybe 14. And I remember, I think I got the second diagnosis was in September. And I remember asking the oncologist, like, can we delay my treatment for a month because the National Junior Games are on? Would it make a difference? And if I remember correctly, he was all good, but my mum was like, "Are you like nuts? Like, what are you talking about?" And he seemed to be pretty relaxed with it. Like, yeah, we can do it in a month. Like, cool. So I remember like at that point, I was already obsessed with the sport, and the sport really helped me in that second time, to mediate the kind of very, very real sense and trying to come to terms with being a mortal person now. Like, life means something and death means the end of that.
Yeah.
And what that means and all that, those kind of very deep questions that a 12-year-old shouldn't be asking, but I was. And maybe it was the previous trauma that had, made me that way inclined. But yeah, luckily I went through the treatment and it worked out and everything was good. And yeah, that's what it was. And I continued with the sport.
That's really interesting, and it's got my brain going in a direction that I have never really spoken to anyone about, to be honest, in terms of the mortality aspect. And it was quite interesting when you said, you were a certain age and you realized that this could mean that I could die. My question is, do you feel like that appreciation of mortality changed your approach to life and changed your approach to the sport that you now loved and found? And I'll give a bit of context around like why it's kind of come to me in this way, is because I've never experienced like really major serious trauma that I know many people in the world have. Like I've never, there's wars going on left, right, and centre. I've never been a part of that. I know people that have lost friends, family, at a very young age, and I've not experienced that like really close to me yet. But I've always had this sense and understanding of mortality and the fact that, as you say, death can come at any time. It's right around the corner, and that means the end of this life that we have. And obviously people have their different beliefs, and but I personally see it as the end, right? And that feeling and that thought has made me really motivated to get the absolute most of every single thing I can possibly do. And I feel like that really helped to push me to do the best I could with all the opportunities that I got, with diving, outside of diving, everything. And I really couldn't tell you where that sense or understanding came from at all. It's quite interesting that you have this clear point. I don't know when that point came for me, but I really believe that it's something that I've had for a long time. Can you remember that switch specifically? And as I said before, my little monologue, did it change the way, do you feel like it changed the way that you approached your life?
Yeah. I think it definitely, it made me very much a materialist in the sense of, I didn't take any comfort in the kind of various things like religion or anything like that. Like it very much hit me like this moment is going to end, irrelevant of what story I tell about it. So it kind of made me view it's very popular to be like a stoic. Stoicism is very popular, but I would say I was more Epicurean in my thinking. Whereas I didn't want to, like very much a materialist. It made me become very much a materialist, as in what is necessary to do now, and kind of chasing no, maybe chasing pleasure is the wrong word. Pleasure maybe to in the English language, it may not capture everything I'm trying to say, but it not even pleasant pleasure. Basically, it made me appreciate the moment and try and get the most out of those moments, and it made me also think about how do you go about choosing that kind of hierarchy of what you value in a very real, like concrete way, very, very real concrete way, in terms of, even if it quote unquote, us as athletes, we delay gratification all the time, all the time. It's essentially, for the lack of anything else, discipline or whatever you want to say, essentially it's delaying gratification because we value this other pot of gold that we see. So we are willing to, go on, climb up the rainbow just so we can slide back down and then do it again. And we're, very good at being able to delay gratification essentially, or never even chase other gratification. But that moment to me really very clearly crystallized what I valued and made me really see, or gave me the tools to be able to decipher what I value, not just in the present moment, but if I'm going to delay gratification, is that really a higher value that I'm truly care about? I couldn't lie to myself about those. It made me be very honest with what I really want. And if I do really want that, I have to be willing to chase it the best way I can, even if, the deck is stacked against me. So it made me not chase, kind of, in the words of TLC, don't go chasing waterfalls. I wasn't chasing waterfalls. I needed to know what it was. I don't know. It just came to me there, but yeah. So I think that was the moment for me. And throughout my life, I have a very, very, very rational way of looking at what I value and then what needs to be done. And it made me very practical thinkers. Maybe it's to my detriment sometimes. But it certainly
sometimes I felt it was to my
think.
detriment as well. I really felt that. Sometimes I thought I would be too practical with my thinking and not emotional enough sometimes.
Yeah, no, totally. But it definitely made me, I think it served me as an athlete, specifically in my sport. And I was never the most physically talented athlete for my sport, specifically in my classification. You know, I'm not that big. I'm not that fast. All of those things weren't there, but it made me kind of look at it that I really love this. I want to be the best I can be at this thing. What do I need to do? And again, it also made me realize, like, I couldn't be a sprinter, even in the Paralympic field. Like, I don't have the tools, and there's no way to make that up. You either you can do it, at these kind of empirical sports, or you just can't. Whereas in a team sports where you kind of you can acquire skills to highlight the advantages you have versus the disadvantages, it leaves you much more room to grow. So yeah, I think maybe that's why I loved the game as well at that age, because it was kind of coinciding and emerging at the same time in my thinking. Yeah. So that was the moment for me.
So was it then? So the sport became your higher purpose then in that moment? Was that your primary focus?
I think the sport gave me the most joy.
Okay.
I mean, the time that I came when I was a young athlete and I was coming through, the way everything was set up within the Great Britain program specifically, there was no options to study and train and play and all that. The culture was very different, very, very different at the time. So you were either going to do it, and I had some peers of mine who made the men's team much younger than me, but I was invited to those camps and I would never go. Because I was like, I love this thing, but I also wanted to get my education. And maybe that's the South Asian heritage. Like, my mom was like, do what you want as long as you get a degree, kind of thing. And I had other passions as well. I was interested in philosophy and politics and you're talking also at the time when 9/11 happened. So, it's a political time. And I grew up in a household where my granddad would be talking about, Iran Contra and Afghanistan and the Mujahideen getting. So I was in this environment where I had a lot of this information beforehand, and then the world was happening, and I was interested in that too. But sport was the joy for me. But I didn't want to completely abandon those things that kind of also move my spirit, so to speak.
Well, but that's actually, in a way, I'm slightly surprised to hear that, because when you kind of referred to the sport earlier as like your drug of choice, and so I started imagining it that maybe it was this, in a positive way, like this very all-consuming thing, but actually, it's not fully the case.
But it is. I don't know. I don't know if it because it is the thing that allowed me to embody joy and where I felt the most myself. So it was the thing that I would think about before I went to sleep, and the first thing I would think about when I wake up, like completely. Like, I was obsessed with basketball. Like, I don't know, you guys might be slightly younger than me, or we were similar kind of age, but the NBA used to come on on ITV2 at like 3:00 in the morning. And I remember like my A-level exams, and the Lakers are playing the Sacramento Kings in 2003 or 2002 in the Western Conference Finals. And Rob Horry hits a shot in Game 6 to win. And I had a big exam the next day. I can't remember if it was history or I can't remember what the exam was, but like the whole house is asleep, and I was like sneakily watching in the middle of the night, like live. And I just screamed exactly and woke up the whole house.
I've done exactly the same thing watching Miami Heat. That was my team.
Yeah, well,
and
there
I'd
you
do
go.
the same thing like in the middle of the night. But I wouldn't scream. I'd be there like, when you do like the big celebration, but silent, but you're like,
yeah.
That was exactly why. Because I knew that my mom would kill me if she got working up at me watching the game.
Exactly. So it was consuming, but I do have other sides to me that are also throughout my sporting career was very interested in still exploring. And I think that is the South Asian thing of like, if you're Indian, Pakistani family, like your mom says you're going to uni, you're going to uni. There's no, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's just how it is. Like, the decision is made for you, not by you.
Yeah, completely.
So you mentioned, I think a number of things that you did beyond your sport. Again, making comparisons with myself, I did a lot of things outside of my sport, and it was all done knowing that at some point there'd be an end point to my career, almost the mortality of my career. I knew it was coming to an end at some point. I was going to have to figure myself out beyond that. So I did a lot of work just to explore what I liked, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at before I retired, so that when I did retire, I could just jump into the next thing straight away. And it seems like you did similar. Was that done intentionally, again, knowing the mortality of your career? And I feel like you've kind of thrown yourself into the deep end with a lot of these things and then figured out how to swim. Who were some of the most important people who helped kind of guide you in these different ventures?
Yeah, I do tend to jump in and roll the dice on things. I mean, I've had incredible mentors through. I mean, one of the most amazing things about and why, in my life, there are times when I've absolutely hated being part of a team sport, like hated it, because it's not all in my control. There's just like having to deal with, the a team sport where your performance is not just in your own hands is always difficult. And it was something that I certainly struggled with. But one of the things that playing wheelchair basketball, having a team sport, is that it does, I genuinely have some of the deepest friendships that I've made through that. I mean, and I'm also lucky I had it from school as well. So I've been friends with my best friends are the same friends that we were in year 7, basically. But I have this cohort of people that are like amazing mentors, Being a person of color as well in a sport, Paralympic sport in general is completely dominated by white people, for the lack of a better word. There's very few of us, very few of us, because it's and there's many barriers to that, but whatever. But I was really lucky that I had there was a person called Joe Giratney, who was the first South Asian to play for Great Britain, Adi Adepitan, who was the best man at my wedding last year, and all of these other people that I could see myself in reflected back, but they had the time and the patience, and I also got to experience things with them. It's going to be interesting. When you meet people older, as you get older, you can't certify them because they haven't gone through the stupid stuff that you guys got through when you were a kid, and they've come through in a real way, like in dumb ways. So all of those things that we organically went through, they're all certified for me. And as such, they've helped me massively, not just inspirationally and in practical ways, but just seeing, for the lack of a better word, like the grace that they had for this young kid, at 13, who was cocky and just wanted to, tear everyone's head off, but wasn't very good. And how they've nurtured me throughout that journey. They've been amazing. And then since then, I suppose I've been lucky of getting to, be part of some other projects that I've met great people and great friends, and they've been a massive help.
So some of those other things, kind of non-basketball, that you've been doing, I guess, since retirement, and I guess probably actually whilst you were still playing. How did your experiences throughout your basketball career kind of positively or negatively influence, those things? Obviously, particularly acting. That's something that you've been deeply involved in since your retirement.
Well, that was an accident. I never considered to be an actor. And the funny thing about it is that all came about during those Loughborough lockdown camps.
Because there was nothing better.
It was a wild time. It was, literally that. And I did an audition off, like, as a goof, basically, just to pass some time. And I got the role. And so I was learning the script for this show while I was in Tokyo. So my downtime, like, was spent, like, learning, like, 40 pages of dialogue, essentially, in preparation, because I think we filmed, I want to say in October, maybe early October. So that was all happening at the same time. I'd never done an acting lesson. I didn't like drama in school or anything like that. Like I don't know if sport has helped me. It's very different for me, and I suppose that's why I kind of love it. Nothing is going to feel like your first love, right? Like it's not the same. It's never going to be the same. And if retirement is like, death of your spouse, your second wife, you're going to love her, but
just not quite.
It's not your high school sweetheart. Do you know what I mean? It's not your high school sweetheart. It's not. You might say to her, "Babe, I love you just as much," and you might even try and convince yourself. But you may love them just as much, but it's not going to be the same way, right? Like, it's just not. It's not. But it's almost like, my love for storytelling, acting, and storytelling in general, I have a very different relationship to it, and it's completely the opposite of what I had with sport. If I was to describe sport, I said this to someone before, but sport to me is like salvation, whereas like the arts are like redemption. Like, I can be saved, I can have my soul saved by sport if I just do these rituals. And that's how I felt about the game. Like, I have these very specific rituals that if I just do them in this order and I just do these things, you can be saved. Salvation is there. And I suppose in my case, it was winning throwing the ball in a hole successfully, I suppose. But when it comes to acting and storytelling, it's very much redemptive. There is no right answer. There just isn't. And no matter all of those kind of 20 years of working those pathways in my brain, which give me that feedback of, oh, I did well. And I know, I can tell I did well because this is what the result was. It just doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. And I love that. And it's so different. I think maybe I take for granted, and I suppose you guys would too, as you post-career, there is just no shortcut to just working as hard as you can, whatever that means, right? And I suppose that comes from sport for me. But I kind of very much look past that, and yeah, they're very, very different, very, very different, and they kind of spark very different neurons in my brain, I think, as well.
I guess in follow up to that, a similarity between maybe sport and the screen is the critical media. Maybe because it's a slightly more niche sport, wheelchair basketball, you might not get as much. But I'm sure there's everyone's got their opinions in the same way on the screen. Everyone's got their opinions, and I googled Extrapolations, the show that you're in, and the first review that popped up was from The Guardian, and the title of that review said, "Even Meryl Streep can't save this convoluted eco drama," which I thought was quite brutal. To be fair, because I'm not actually seeing it, but I've heard it's not. Well, some of the other things I read wasn't that bad. How do you deal with those critics then, or that thing, especially when there's no kind of, as you say, there's no clear right or wrong or good or bad in acting compared to sport? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, Extrapolation is an anthology, and my episode got the best ratings out of all of the show. So that helped me, because I was like, if they panned me, yeah, exactly. I was like, yeah, better than Meryl Streep, apparently. But yeah, apparently. No, but it was. I think I didn't know enough to care about the critics at that time. I think certainly a bit more now. But it's not filmmaking or show making. It's not my masterpiece at all, and I never have that level of attachment like I had in sport. It's not my story to tell. I'm writing, and certainly if that got panned, and if the series that we're trying to make, if it gets made and it gets panned, that would hurt me, because it's come from inside of me. But being a piece of the larger kind of, being a stroke on a canvas, the larger piece getting upset or getting panned, it doesn't affect me. But it doesn't seem to be. What I would say is, it was very easy for me, or at least I felt. I mean, it may just be self-soothing insanity, but it was very easy. The critics, in terms of the sporting critics, would be like, was that option available to me? Could I have done differently? So like in my career, there's only one moment that I really, really regret, that I chose a decision, which was in the 2014 World Championships. So I played in 3 World Championships. I lost a total of 3 games, right, in 3 World Championships, but I've only got 1 gold medal. And we bombed out on 2. So we topped the group in 2010 and in 2014, and we lost the quarterfinal, once by 2 points and once by 4 points or something like that, right? When we were the favored going in. And the only regret I have is in 2014, I had a moment where we drew up a play. It was the end. We were playing Turkey, who we had a large rivalry across Europe for many, many years. We had many great games, and we beat them in Rio in the bronze medal game as well. So it's some very, very great game, a lot of great games. And the play was designed and the play worked, but I caught the ball on the wing, and the defense did something that they normally wouldn't do, and they left me open. And I ran the play rather than be present and do the thing that I'm paid for, basically, was put the ball in the hole when it was available. I was too fixated on not the present moment. So that's my only regret. So I think in the case of critics, when it came to sport, it never really bothered me, because I was like, was this available to me? Could it have gone different? Makes and misses never bothered me, ever. Um, uh, but in art, I don't know. I haven't produced completely my own thing yet. So maybe if that gets panned, you can have me back and I'll be crying, and we can have a session.
I mean, well, but that does make me want to ask, because obviously I read about the play Grenfell that you were in, the theatre production, and that was performed in London. And I think, am I right in saying that was an incredibly meaningful performance for you to do? Can you just explain that one?
Yeah, so we did Grenfell in the Words of the Survivors at the National Theatre, and it was a verbatim play. Yeah, man, that was hard. That was really. I mean, we spoke about trauma and stuff like that before. Um, that was really difficult. One, because I'm from London, I'm from West London, like I'm from Ealing, and Grenfell is literally up the road. I drive past on the A40 flyover, like probably driven past a million times, and gone to Latbrook Road. Like it's in the ends, like, do you know what I mean? And I remember the day when it happened. And we've just heard news that they're going to charge people today. It's just come out. Finally, some companies we might see some justice. Finally.
Sorry.
Yeah, but it was tough on many levels. It was tough on the human level. It was also very, it was capitalism at its most murderous as well. Like it's basically like everything that happened is like, it was so preventable, and it was all this incentive structures that made it just like, it's like peak murderous capitalism essentially. And that made it really difficult, because it felt like it was just so dehumanizing on so many levels. But yeah, it was really, really meaningful. It was the first time I've been on stage and theater as well. So that was um, an experience in itself. So it was a lot. But I'm really, really, really glad I got to do it and tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it was verbatim, so meaning all the lines are taken from real things people have said from witnesses or people involved.
Yeah, so Gillian Solvo, who's an amazing playwright, she does a lot of different verbatim plays. She's done some amazing work. So she did interviews with some of the survivors, and all of the transcript essentially then got put together as a cohesive. So every and has to be perfect as a verbatim. So there's very little liberty as an actor that you can, and also you're not playing a character. This was, I played a Syrian guy, and his name is Maher Khuder, and his story. One of the things that people don't talk about disabled people, about Grenfell, is that it disproportionately affected disabled people, and they literally died only because they are disabled. Like there's no other reason, essentially. So, and I was playing the only disabled. He has polio in his legs, and he has 2 daughters and a wife, and just his experience and what he had to go through. But then knowing, we did all the 72 victims in the process of making the play. We basically every day we did for every single victim we did a presentation essentially. So all of us, all the cast and everyone would go and research this particular victim and their circumstance, and then relay it. So as we wanted to stay aware and really honor the victims, not just the survivors, but the victims too. So it was hard, man. It was really, really, really hard. but it's something that I'm really great. Like I said, I'm really grateful for, and something that's going to stick with me forever. And it really does crystallize. In some ways, things like that do kind of crystallize uh, how unimportant some things are in a moment. Like for Maher, like everyone, he had to make a choice in split second, basically, and tell his wife and his daughters to leave him. And he was on the sixth floor, and he can't get down. And he was like, "Go," knowing full well that he's saying, that choice, like, I'm talking about, shooting a 3-pointer, like with the game on the line. It means there is no pressure. Having to make a choice like that, like genuinely having to choose that, it's so dystopian. It's so messed up. But it's just so human and so real. It was a lot, man. It was a lot. Really, really meaningful that we got to, in some small way, speak for those who don't get hurt.
I mean, just listening is kind of crazy. But also, do you think it's normal for an athlete to be able to transition so effectively into the arts, into a creative endeavor?
What's normal, Freddie? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's normal? I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's very different. It's very difficult. It's definitely harder than sport in a way, because there's so little control. And it's definitely a different skill to learn. Like I'll do a self-tape audition, and you don't, like, you've auditioned and depending on the thing, but say it's like a really good character, like a real person. You're going to play a real person. They send you all this information, and you throw it out into the ether, and you get no feedback, nothing. Whereas in sport, you're always getting feedback, either tactile or yourself or your coach or results. There's always, like, I have no idea why I got the roles I've got, and I've got no idea why I haven't got the roles I haven't got. Like, no idea.
It's so interesting, like, for someone that enjoyed that control so much from the basketball career. Like, what have you had to unlearn, I guess, to be able to cope with that? Because it's a difficult thing to cope with when you put something out there and you don't get anything back, and you've got to then go and process that yourself. How have you managed to switch your identity for that?
I think one thing that I'm very fortunate with is that I tend to naturally meet things where they are in their own terms. I don't try and impose, like, I never started acting and try and impose the scheme that's worked in basketball. Like, I wouldn't, like, I've always found it, I don't know if you guys find it strange, but I find it really, really strange that in the bureaucracy of our sports, performance directors can jump from sport to sport. And, there is, like, it seems really, like, I wouldn't dare come into diving and try and lead diving, even though I've been in the lead. I think there is such specificity in so many, or I wouldn't dream of making decisions that are big for a sport I don't understand.
I think
like,
it could be
argued,
I think it could be argued sometimes that the naivety is sometimes actually quite useful to have a fresh perspective in that respect. Like, I agree and understand what you mean.
Maybe. I mean, but I do think, in the sense of, I think the cross discipline values are overstated. I think they are. I think expertise is a real thing while having flexibility and growth. But I think expertise is a real thing. And I mean, we're going slightly off tangent, but, like, if you take something like Man United, you take a club like Man United that's had all the success in the world, you'd remove one person that didn't diffuse their decision-making genius throughout the organization. Same resources available. You remove that one great decision maker, you can hire all the best XYZ. You can't get there because this guy's taste, for the lack of a better word, essentially was better than everyone else's.
Yoda's nodding.
Yeah.
No, it's,
So
it's,
it's
I
taste,
agree with it
like,
100%.
My new fan.
Yeah, so it's like taste, right? Like in music too, like, you hear about these great producers who have like the ear, and their taste is what matters. Like, and they can, produce songs that, make the human body, have a reaction, essentially. So going back to that, like, I never try and impose the lessons I've learned through sport on other domains of my life at all. And I haven't ever done. Like, it's not a challenge. Like, it just doesn't happen. I kind of try and meet wherever I am with the thing that it is. And I try and learn the games of that, the rules of that game, essentially.
That's a
So
really,
it wasn't really a challenge for me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and powerful perspective, and I'm not really like looked at it that way. I feel like I've always maybe overvalued the idea of transfer of expertise, transfer of knowledge, but actually maybe sometimes that's overdone, and you lose the value of that expertise if you try and apply it elsewhere, and sometimes it's just not applicable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should not throw away the canvas, but always remember, like, there is multiple shades of paint, and that canvas will look very different depending on the tools you're using. So I think the canvas the sport provides me, and I said before, like, I think maybe I'm taking it for granted, but the idea to work as hard as you can and what that really looks like, and overwork. I mean, as athletes, all of us have overtrained, right, to find that limit, push the boundary too far, and then had to realize as older athletes, like, that was dumb. Like, why was I doing that much? You know what I mean? And then become smart. Like, working smart is a thing that is only possible in a domain that you've worked stupidly at. I think you can't work smart till you work stupidly, in my opinion. But realizing that there is a smarter and a dumber way to work is the lesson I've learned from sport. So rather than the specificity of like X leads to Y, it just doesn't. Like, you're speaking a different language now. It's completely different.
And
different language, different alphabet.
What I've really found in recent years when I've been like reflecting on this is, like, for me, the main transferable skill from sport is just a form of resilience, let's say, and of just keeping going. Like you said, overtraining, keep going. But when I look back on it, it's like almost like I was a bit of a soldier, because, being sort of given orders almost, and just like, yes, okay, like I'll follow them, and I succeeded because I was one of the people who just kept going. A lot of people dropped away. I didn't. Like, I took it all. I kept going. And that's the big reason why I achieved. But away from sport, a lot of people always told me, oh, these transferable skills. But I'm like, yeah, but now I'm in a world where I'm having to make all the decisions myself. It's exactly like you said, Gaz. Suddenly you go from an obvious game where the outcome is obvious. You get feedback constantly. And then now you're in the world where you have no fucking clue what's going on. And you don't know what's good, what's not. You're trying to find data points maybe, but like, where from? And, for me, I found that super hard, super, super hard. And I can really imagine that from a creative point of view, again, like exactly what you're saying. It's just suddenly there's no like box that you can make everything make sense within. And yeah, man.
No, and merit, like, we are spoiled as athletes, like, as much as we think sport, not the idealized version from outside where sport is a pure meritocracy. I'm not saying it is, obviously not. Like, we've all experienced sport. We know it's not pure meritocracy, right? There's all these other things, that variables and whatever else. But it's certainly more of meritocracy than anything else in the world. Like, it
so true.
Really, really is. So it's very hard to go from a place where largely meritocratic or generally meritocratic, to being a space where the stated rules of the game are that it is meritocratic, but it's just completely not. And you've come from a game you've played where it is meritocratic to a lesser and larger degree, but parking that to the side, there is still, as much as other variables are going to make a difference. If you are running a 9.57 100-meter sprint, you're going to the Olympics. Like, no amount of whatever else is going to stop you from going to the Olympics. Like, you run a 9.57, here's your ticket. Thank you very much. I can hate you, but it doesn't matter. Like, do you know what I mean? So, so coming from a space like that, and we're in this wider world where, we are. This is the part that I did struggle with, not necessarily just with the art, but we're propagandized from a very young age that you live in a meritocracy. We end up going into a field and essentially pouring our soul into something which is largely meritocratic, and then being pulled out of that. And now you're in this larger world, which when you were young, you were still told that it was a meritocracy, and you're thrown into that, and it isn't at all a meritocracy. That's the part that I struggle with as well.
I mean, and as someone with a disability as well, I mean, that, where does that sort of like add into that as well?
I'm sure it does, but I wouldn't be aware of. Okay, so I'm one of the very privileged few that has had that disability has had a positive impact on my life because I am a Paralympian, right? And I'm essentially in the kind of, whatever you want to say, like top 1% of disabled people in the world that can do something that is arbitrarily valued by our society as such, that someone that there is this infrastructure of competition and everything else around it, and it's valued to some degree. And I'm also privileged enough that my disability is not so severe that it's more superficial than, say, if I was a quadriplegic, or like I'm even if I use a wheelchair and I'm not using a prosthetic, I can still get up and not get defeated by like the people who are going to put the ramp down on a bus. I can just jump up if I have to. So there is a level of privilege that I have as a disabled person, which is not afforded to 99.9% of disabled people. And I'm also aware that, especially in the current environment, politically and socially, I am one of those privileged disabled people that's gained some of their humanity back by performing for people in the Paralympics, which is a spectacle. Whereas, they're talking about cutting disability benefits and this and that, and the dehumanization of not just disabled people, but certainly also disabled people. That privilege is not lost on me whatsoever. And I think it's really problematic, actually. I think in some ways it's really, really problematic. Because it's funny. Like, if you're an Olympian, you are just a human being. That's great. Whereas if you're a Paralympian, you are a disabled person that is allowed a small seat at a table, which is reserved for able-bodied people, essentially. and that's not lost on me. It's not lost also on me, like the difference between if I go out, like it's super funny if I'm walking my dog and I take him when I'm using a day, we call it a day chair, it's just like a wheelchair, right? And if I'm in a wheelchair and I'm walking the dog, everyone's super nice to me, really, really nice to me. Like, there's chit chatting, but if I go in my tracksuit and I've got my hoodie up and I'm walking with the prosthetic, no one says a word to me. The world is much colder, much, much colder.
So interesting.
So it the disability plays a part. My disability, I'm in a very rare case where my disability has objectively had a materially positive effect on my life, right? It's allowed me to meet my wife and buy a house and so on and so forth, like materially impacted my life in a way where I can say, I don't know if it would be the same if I wasn't disabled, if I wasn't an amputee. So my relationship, it's complicated, Freddie, but it was a mad question. But like I don't know. I've just gone off on a tangent and not answered it at all. But yeah, cut that.
Well, I think it was a very, very loose question, but I mean, you had me fixed on every word you were saying. Actually, Gaz, that was
because it wasn't making sense. You were like, at some point he's gonna land. He's gonna land at some point.
It makes sense for me because
I'm gonna let him land.
It makes sense for me because it just shows an awareness that not many people have, and I feel like if more people in this world had the awareness that you have of yourself, the world would be a significantly better place because not many people have that awareness, which I think is a testament to you and your career and everything that you've been able to achieve in and out of the sport. There's some of the transitions that you've made, the transformation that you've made beyond your sport, and the humility that you can speak about it all with. You've acted alongside some of the most, or in the same movie as alongside some of the most incredible people. You've won some incredible things. You're an MBE. You've achieved so much, but you'd never know it based on the way you speak. You speak with such introspection and just clarity and honesty, which many people just can't do. And that's phenomenal. And regrettably, I need to bring this episode to an end because I feel like we could continue talking for hours on end, and I feel like we've only just started to hit a good point. And I could listen
Apologies,
to you. Apologies,
man. I kept rambling.
That's the point. That's the point of these conversations, and that's why we put ourselves on mute, because it allows that just flow of talk where we really learn so much, and I've learned so much from this conversation, and I feel like honoured to be able to have it, and that's been the value of this podcast, to be honest. But before we do bring this main aspect of the podcast to an end, I'd like to ask you the question that we asked to all of our guests, which is, if your career was a movie, which, who knows, maybe one day it will be, and you can play yourself. If your career was a movie, what would the title be?
The de-aging technology is going to have to be working overtime, man. I'm going to look like, what is it, Pesci and Robert De Niro in Irishman.
If your career was a movie, what would the title be?
Finding meaning.
Whoa. Boom. Done.
I love it.
If you had to answer that question for yourself right now, what would the answer be in a sentence or two?
What? Sorry, what question?
If that were a question, if that movie title were a question, finding meaning.
Yeah.
What does that feel like right now?
In 30 seconds.
I think, boy, finding that, oh man, you're killing me. I think, I can't do it in 30 seconds. For me, meaning is only found after the fact. So the only way to find meaning is keep going on adventures, essentially.
I like that.
And then see what you learn or didn't.
Aww.
That makes a lot of sense. It really does.
I think actually that is that is something we learn from being an athlete, is that you can perform under pressure. Therefore, you can do things. You can put yourself in difficult situations. And then, and then what happens, and you find the meaning from that. But yeah, and you see, we put a bit of pressure on you again, Gaz, the athlete, and look what comes out. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Oh,
amazing.
Love it. Love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just second what Jonas said. Really, really amazing to have this conversation with you guys. So thank you for everything you've brought and all your amazing analogies. It's been awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Cool, man. I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, well, that is where we will end this main episode. So thank you, Gaz Choudhry, MBE. But Gaz is going to stay around for one more dive, our bonus sections. If you're not there yet, the link is in the show notes. And if not, we will catch you in the next one. Cheers.